Lena Carter had been a licensed nurse for less than a week when the day that changed her life began. She was 24 years old, fresh out of school, and still carried the quiet excitement of finally wearing the hospital badge she had worked so hard to earn. St. Matthew's Medical Center was much bigger than the training hospital where she had studied. The hallways seemed longer, the pace was faster, and everyone looked like they already knew exactly what they were doing. Lena often felt like the only person still figuring things out. Still, she loved the job. Every morning she arrived early, sometimes almost 40 minutes before her shift started. She liked having a few quiet minutes at the nurse station before the day became busy. She would check the schedule, review patient notes, and sip the coffee she carried from the small shop across the street. That morning started like any other. The sun was barely up when she walked through the hospital entrance. The lobby smelled faintly of cleaning solution and fresh floor wax. A security guard nodded as she passed. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she replied with a small smile. Her sneakers made soft sounds against the shiny floor as she headed toward the elevators. She was assigned to the cardiac observation wing that week. Most of the patients there needed monitoring, but were stable. At least that was what she expected when the day began. When Lena stepped onto the third floor, she immediately noticed something strange. Two hospital administrators were standing near the nurses' station, speaking in low voices. A pair of security officers she had never seen before stood near the hallway entrance. They were not hospital security. Their dark suits and small earpieces made that obvious. Lena slowed her steps. Something important was happening. Inside the nurses' station, the usual morning chatter was gone. The experienced nurses looked serious as they reviewed charts. One of them, a senior nurse named Patricia Wells, noticed Lena and motioned her over. "You're early again," Patricia said quietly. "I like getting started before things get busy," Lena replied. Patricia gave a quick nod, but didn't smile the way she normally did. "Listen carefully," she said. "We're getting a special patient this morning. Very important. Security will control access to the wing. Only assigned staff go in or out." Lena blinked. "Important like a politician?" Patricia leaned a little closer and lowered her voice. "Military," she said. "Very high ranking. That's all we were told." Lena felt a small wave of nerves pass through her. She had barely finished orientation, and now she was working during what sounded like a major security situation. "What happened to him?" she asked. "Collapsed during a meeting nearby," Patricia said. "Doctors think it's heart-related. They're bringing him here because this wing has the monitoring equipment they want." At that moment, the elevator doors opened down the hall. Several people stepped out at once. Two doctors pushed a hospital bed quickly, but carefully. Behind them walked three men in dark suits who scanned the hallway as they moved. One of them spoke quietly into his sleeve. The entire floor suddenly felt different. Lena stepped back as the group passed the nurses' station. She caught only a quick glimpse of the man on the bed. He looked to be in his late 60s. His gray hair was neatly cut, and even while unconscious, he carried the quiet presence of someone used to command. Monitors and four lines were already connected as the bed moved toward the last room in the hallway. One of the suited agents stopped near the nurses' station. "This wing is now restricted," he said calmly. "Only assigned medical staff are allowed beyond this point." Patricia nodded. "Understood." The man gave a short nod and returned down the hallway. For the next 20 minutes, the floor became busy in a very controlled way. Doctors entered and exited the room, while security remained near the door. Lena tried to stay focused on her normal duties. She checked blood pressure readings, updated patient charts, and helped another nurse prepare medication. But everyone on the floor could feel the tension. Eventually, Patricia approached again with a clipboard. "All right," she said. "We're assigning limited monitoring shifts. Lena, you'll assist with vitals logging." Lena looked up in surprise. "Me?" "You're already on this wing," Patricia replied. "You'll only be observing the monitor feed and logging readings every 15 minutes. No unnecessary interaction with the patient. The doctors will handle everything else." Lena nodded quickly. "Yes, of course." Patricia's expression turned serious again. "One more thing," she said. "Security asked for strict protocol. No touching the patient unless a physician instructs you directly. Understood. Understood, Lena said. A few minutes later, she found herself standing outside the guarded room. One of the agents opened the door after Patricia confirmed Lena's assignment. 5 minutes at a time, he said. Log the readings and step out if you're not needed. Lena nodded. Her heart beat a little faster as she stepped inside. The room was quiet except for the steady electronic sounds of medical equipment. A heart monitor displayed a slow rhythm across the screen. The patient lay still on the bed, oxygen line in place. 2 4 bags hung from a metal stand beside him. Lena walked to the monitor station and glanced at the chart attached to the foot of the bed. The name printed there made her pause. General Daniel Harlow. Even Lena, who rarely followed military news, recognized the name. She had seen it once on television during a report about international defense meetings. So the whispers had been true. She swallowed quietly and focused on her task. The monitor displayed heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels, and several other readings she had studied during training. At first, everything looked stable. Heart rate, 62. Oxygen, normal. Blood pressure, slightly elevated but not alarming. She began writing the numbers carefully on the observation sheet. Minutes passed quietly, but as Lena continued watching the monitor, something small began to bother her. The rhythm pattern looked slightly uneven, not dramatically wrong, just inconsistent. She leaned closer to the screen. During training, one of her instructors had once told the class something important. Machines are helpful, the instructor had said, but your eyes and instincts matter too. Lena watched the rhythm again. The number stayed within normal range, yet the space in between beats looked slightly irregular. She glanced at the patient. He remained still, breathing slowly. Maybe it was nothing. She checked the sensor cables attached to his chest. Everything appeared properly connected. Still, the feeling in her mind didn't disappear. Lena checked the time. She still had 2 minutes left before leaving the room. The monitor flickered slightly again. The heart rate number stayed steady, but the waveform skipped in a strange way. Lena frowned. During training, she had seen something similar once during a simulation exercise, but that situation had involved a loose sensor. She checked the leads again. They looked secure. Her eyes returned to the patient's face. His skin tone looked normal, but something about the moment felt wrong to her. Maybe she was just nervous because the patient was so important. That thought almost made her step away. But the instructor's voice returned to her memory again. Trust what you see, the instructor had said, not just what the machine tells you. Lena hesitated. Protocol said not to touch the patient without instruction. But nurses check pulses manually all the time. Just one quick check. It would take 2 seconds. She looked toward the door. No one was inside the room with her. Slowly, she stepped closer to the bed. Her fingers hovered near the patient's wrist. Just confirming, she whispered softly to herself. She gently placed 2 fingers against the man's pulse point. For a second, she felt nothing. Then the beat appeared. Strong, then slightly delayed. Then normal again. Her brow tightened. The rhythm felt different from what the monitor suggested. She leaned closer, concentrating. That's when the door burst open. 2 security agents stepped inside instantly. Both stopped the moment they saw her hand touching the patient's wrist. Step away from the patient, one of them said sharply. Lena's heart jumped. She quickly lifted her hand. I was just checking. Step back, the agent repeated. Within seconds, more people entered the room. A doctor, Patricia, and another hospital administrator hurried inside. What happened? The administrator asked. One of the agents pointed toward Lena. She touched the patient. The room fell silent. Patricia's expression changed immediately. Lena, she said quietly, did you have authorization for that? Lena felt every eye in the room on her. The monitor rhythm looked strange, she said quickly. I thought maybe you were instructed not to touch the patient, the administrator interrupted. I understand, Lena said, her voice tightening. But the waveform. The agent spoke again. Protocol was clear. The administrator sighed and rubbed his forehead. Miss Carter, he said, please step outside. Lena's stomach dropped. She walked slowly toward the hallway. Outside the room, The door closed behind her. She could hear muffled voices inside. Minutes later, the administrator came out. His expression looked firm. "Turn in your badge," he said. Lena stared at him. "What?" "You violated a direct security protocol involving a protected patient," he said. "Your employment is terminated effective immediately." The words felt unreal. "I was just checking his pulse," Lena said quietly. But the decision had already been made. Within an hour, the rookie nurse who had been so excited about her first week walked out of the hospital, carrying a small box with her things. Her badge no longer worked. Her shift was over, and her career seemed to have ended before it had even truly begun. After leaving the hospital, Lena walked slowly along the empty city streets. The early afternoon sun felt warm on her face, but she barely noticed it. Her mind was spinning with disbelief. She had only tried to do her job, to trust what she saw, and yet that simple act had cost her everything she had worked for. Her bag felt unusually heavy on her shoulder, as if it carried not only her things, but also the weight of her failure. She tried to make sense of what had happened. Hospitals were always strict about protocols. She knew that, but this felt different. The urgency she felt when she saw the monitor, the subtle changes in the heart rhythm. She had followed her instincts. How could that be wrong? She reached a small park and sat on a bench, trying to calm herself. The city noises were distant, like background music she barely noticed. Lena pulled out her phone, hoping a friend might answer, someone to talk to, but every call went unanswered. She didn't want to explain, and she didn't know what to say. How could she tell them she had been fired for doing what she thought was right? Time passed slowly, and the sun began to dip lower in the sky. Lena watched as shadows stretched across the benches and the playground. She felt a mixture of sadness and frustration. Her first week had ended in humiliation, and she wasn't sure what her next step would be. Nursing had been her dream, her plan, and now it felt shattered. Just as she was about to stand and head home, her phone rang. She checked the screen and saw an unfamiliar number. For a moment, she considered ignoring it. Who would be calling her now, after everything? But something told her to answer. "Hello," she said cautiously. "Is this Lena Carter?" A calm, professional voice asked on the other end. "Yes," she replied, her voice small. "This is Lieutenant James from the Department of Defense. May I speak to you for a moment?" Lena's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure if she should hang up or listen. There was a strange mixture of fear and curiosity bubbling inside her. Yes, you can speak to me," she said. There was a pause on the line. The lieutenant's tone remained even, measured. "We are contacting you regarding the incident involving General Harlow at St. Matthew's Medical Center this morning. It's come to our attention that you were involved in checking the general's pulse at a critical time. We have some questions." Lena's mind raced. She couldn't believe it. Questions? From the Pentagon? She had been fired, and now the Pentagon was calling her? I don't understand," she stammered. I didn't mean to." "We understand," the lieutenant said. "Please calm down. We just need to know exactly what happened while you were inside the room. Can you describe your observations?" Lena took a deep breath and began recounting everything. She explained how she noticed the subtle irregularities in the monitor's heart rhythm, how she checked the general's pulse, and how she recorded the readings. She spoke slowly, making sure she didn't leave out any detail. Her voice wavered at times, but she continued. When she finished, there was another pause. "Thank you, Lena," the lieutenant said. "Your quick actions may have prevented a serious event. Please remain available. We may need to follow up in person." Then the line went dead. Lena sat back on the bench, stunned. She could hardly believe what had just happened. For a moment, the humiliation of being fired seemed to fade, replaced by confusion and a strange sense of hope. Could it really be true that her small action, what had felt so simple, had mattered so much? The evening approached, and Lena slowly made her way home. She couldn't stop thinking about the general and what might have happened if she hadn't noticed the irregularity. The thought made her chest tighten. She realized that being fired didn't erase the fact that she had acted on instinct and training, and in doing so, she might have saved a life. The next morning, she returned to the park, trying to collect her thoughts. She hadn't heard anything further from the Pentagon yet, and the waiting was difficult. Every time her phone rang, she jumped. She tried to distract herself by reading a book she had brought along, but the words blurred as her mind replayed the events from the previous day. Around mid-morning, she finally received another call. This time, the voice on the line was different. It was firm but kind. "Lena Carter? This is Dr. Morgan with the Department of Defense Medical Corps. We reviewed the situation and need you to come in for a discussion. Your actions yesterday were noted as unusual but significant. We would like to speak with you in person." Lena's stomach fluttered. In person? She nodded to herself even though no one could see her. This could be the moment that explained everything. She arrived at the designated office, a quiet building not far from the city center. Inside, she was guided to a small conference room. 2 men and 1 woman greeted her, all in professional attire, and invited her to sit. The room smelled faintly of coffee and polished wood, and a large window let in the soft daylight. "Thank you for coming, Lena," said the woman, who introduced herself as Dr. Morgan. "We understand that yesterday was stressful. We're here to clarify what occurred and discuss the significance of your actions." Lena nodded, feeling a mixture of nervousness and relief. "We've reviewed the general's medical data," Dr. Morgan continued. "There was a subtle cardiac irregularity that automated monitoring did not immediately flag. Your observation and pulse check provided critical information that allowed the attending physicians to take action quickly." Lena's mouth went dry. She hadn't expected praise. She had expected questions, maybe even an interrogation. Not this. "So it actually mattered?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Dr. Morgan said with a reassuring smile. "Your instincts and attention to detail may have prevented a serious cardiac event." Lena felt a rush of relief and disbelief. Her chest tightened and tears threatened to come. She had done the right thing, even when the consequences seemed harsh. The men in the room exchanged looks, and then one spoke. "Lena, we understand that the hospital administration terminated your employment for protocol violations. However, we want to clarify that, from a medical standpoint, your actions were commendable. We'd like to know if you would consider assisting us in a special capacity. There are situations where instinct and judgment in nursing can save lives, especially in high-stress environments." Lena felt her mind spin. Special capacity? High-stress environments? She didn't know what to say. I would like to help," she finally said. "If I can make a difference, I would do that." Dr. Morgan nodded. "Good. We'll provide training and guidance. We'll also ensure that your work and instincts are recognized appropriately. For now, you should know that the general has personally requested that the nurse involved in this critical observation be acknowledged." Lena's hands trembled slightly. She had never imagined that her first week as a nurse would bring her face to face with such importance, and now recognition and opportunity had appeared in a way she could never have predicted. As she left the office, she walked slowly down the quiet hallway. She reflected on everything that had happened. The fear, the hesitation, the decision to trust her instincts. She realized that even in moments of doubt, doing what she believed was right mattered more than following rules blindly. Outside, the city was alive with the sounds of people going about their day. Lena breathed deeply, feeling a sense of purpose she hadn't felt before. She understood that nursing wasn't just about following instructions or protocols. Sometimes it was about seeing, noticing, and acting in a way that made a real difference in someone's life. She knew challenges would come, and that not everyone would understand her decisions. But she also knew that moments like yesterday, small as they might seem, were the ones that shaped her path. She had faced fear, confusion, and consequences, and now she was stepping into a new chapter with experience, courage, and the knowledge that instinct and care could save lives. As Lena walked toward home, she felt a quiet determination. Her journey as a nurse was just beginning, and this first week, though difficult and unexpected, had taught her something she would carry forever. Doing what is right often requires courage, and the smallest actions can have the greatest impact. The following morning, Lena woke up before sunrise. Sleep had not come easy, and her mind was already racing through the events of the last 2 days. The calls from the Pentagon, the acknowledgement that her actions had mattered, the strange mix of fear and pride. It all felt like a dream she wasn't quite awake from. She brewed a cup of tea and sat by the kitchen window, watching the city slowly wake up. Cars moved down the street, the hum of traffic blending with the distant sounds of construction. She tried to calm herself, telling herself that today she needed to think clearly and be prepared for whatever the Department of Defense wanted from her next. Around mid-morning, her phone rang. She recognized the number immediately. Taking a deep breath, she answered. "Lena Carter? This is Lieutenant James again," said the voice she had heard a day before. It was calm and professional, but this time there was a faint tone of urgency. "Yes, Lieutenant," Lena replied. "We would like you to come to a secure facility downtown for a follow-up discussion. Your observations regarding General Harlow's pulse and the monitor readings yesterday were critical, and we have additional information we would like to review with you. Will you be able to come today?" Lena hesitated for a moment. A secure facility? She wasn't sure what that entailed. But then she remembered the feelings from the previous day, the relief, the strange sense of purpose, and she nodded to herself. "Yes, I can come," she said. "What time should I be there?" "Please arrive at 1 p.m. Security will guide you through the entrance. Bring identification and be prepared for a brief security screening," Lieutenant James instructed. After hanging up, Lena felt a nervous excitement. She had no idea what to expect. She dressed neatly, choosing a simple blouse and slacks, and left her apartment with enough time to reach the downtown facility calmly. The sun was high in the sky when she arrived at the address provided, and she was met immediately by security officers in dark suits. "Lena Carter?" one asked. "Please follow us." They led her through several secured doors and down a series of hallways that were quieter than any part of the city outside. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant, and soft lights reflected off the polished floors. Lena felt like she had stepped into a different world, one where every movement was watched and every detail mattered. Finally, they stopped at a nondescript door. One of the officers spoke into a headset, then motioned for her to enter. Inside, she found a small conference room, similar to the one from the previous day, but with more people. At least 4 individuals were seated behind a long table, their attention fixed on her as she entered. Lena felt a wave of nervousness, but tried to remain composed. "Please have a seat," said a man at the center of the table, introducing himself as Dr. Lawson. His voice was calm but carried authority. Lena nodded and sat down, smoothing her hands over her lap. "Thank you for coming, Lena," Dr. Lawson began. "We have reviewed the data from General Harlow's stay, and we need to confirm some details about your observations. Specifically, the exact time you noticed irregularities and how you assessed the general's pulse." Lena nodded again. She could feel her heart racing, but she took a deep breath and began to recount the events step by step, just as she had done on the phone. She explained how she noticed the subtle inconsistencies on the monitor, how she decided to manually check the pulse, and what she observed. She described her feelings, her thought process, and the hesitation she had felt before touching the general. Always careful to convey that she understood protocol, but had felt compelled to act. As she spoke, the room remained silent, the officials listening intently. They occasionally exchanged glances but said nothing, allowing her to speak without interruption. When she finished, Dr. Lawson nodded thoughtfully. "Your attention to detail is impressive," he said. "Even a small delay in recognizing these irregularities could have had serious consequences. Your actions directly contributed to the early detection of a potentially life-threatening condition." Lena felt a mix of relief and disbelief. She had feared punishment, but instead, she was being acknowledged for what she had done. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. "So it was the right thing to do?" she asked quietly. Dr. Lawson smiled. "In this case, yes. You acted based on your training and instincts. That combination is rare and it can save lives." Another person at the table, a woman in a smart suit, spoke next. "Lena, we also want to clarify that the hospital's decision to terminate your employment was purely administrative and related to strict protocol. Your actions are separate from that evaluation. We are here to ensure that your professional judgment and abilities are recognized appropriately." The words sank in slowly. Lena had been overwhelmed by the hospital's reaction, and now the Pentagon's officials were making it clear that her instincts had been correct. She felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't expected, validation, something she had craved after the shock of being fired. Dr. Lawson leaned forward. We are also considering offering you an opportunity to work in specialized medical training programs. These programs prepare nurses for high-risk situations where quick thinking and careful observation can save lives. If you're interested, we would like to discuss the possibility with you. Lena's eyes widened. Specialized training? High-risk situations? She had only wanted to be a nurse and help patients every day, but the idea of making a real difference on such a scale made her pulse quicken. I would like that, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The officials nodded in approval. Dr. Lawson continued. Before any decisions are made, we need to gather more information from you and review additional medical data. This will include some in-depth observation of patient monitoring and assessment procedures. Are you comfortable with that? Lena nodded firmly. Yes, I am. I want to learn and help wherever I can. The woman in the suit smiled. Good. You should know that the general has requested to personally acknowledge the nurse involved in this early detection. This is highly unusual and speaks to the importance of your actions. Lena felt a wave of emotion. She had acted without thought of recognition or reward, simply because she felt it was necessary. The idea that her actions were being acknowledged by someone as important as a high-ranking military officer was overwhelming. Dr. Lawson stood and offered her a folder. Inside are some preliminary documents and instructions. Take your time to review them, and we will schedule your next visit for further training and discussion. Lena accepted the folder, holding it carefully as though it were something precious. She thanked the officials and left the room, escorted back through the secure hallways by the officers who had guided her earlier. Outside the facility, the city seemed brighter than before, though it was still mid-afternoon. Lena walked slowly, digesting everything that had just happened. The fear and shame she felt from being fired seemed distant now, replaced by a sense of purpose and determination. She realized that her career was no longer a straight path in a hospital. It was something larger, more challenging, and perhaps more meaningful. She felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement, knowing that she was about to enter a world where every decision, every observation, and every instinct could make a real difference. As Lena made her way home, she thought about the general, the monitor, and the moment that had changed everything. She understood that courage often comes quietly, in small, decisive actions that may seem insignificant at the time, but can have profound consequences. She had been afraid, uncertain, and overwhelmed, yet she had acted. That simple choice had set her on a new path. The city lights began to twinkle as she walked past familiar streets, and Lena felt a quiet strength growing inside her. She knew that challenges would come, that the path ahead would not be easy, but she also knew that she had the ability to rise to the occasion. The events of the last few days had shown her that instincts, care, and attention could truly matter. When Lena finally reached her apartment, she sat by the window, looking out at the bustling city below. The noise, the lights, the people moving through their lives. It all felt different now, more alive, more urgent. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the excitement of opportunity. She had survived fear, confusion, and consequence, and she was ready for what came next. In the quiet of her apartment, Lena made a promise to herself. She would continue to trust her instincts, to act with care and attention, and to never forget the power of small, decisive actions. The path ahead might be uncertain, but she was ready to face it with courage and determination. For the first time in days, Lena felt a sense of clarity and purpose. She was no longer just a rookie nurse. She was someone who had faced a critical moment and stepped forward, and the world had taken notice. The next day, Lena returned to the hospital, not as an employee, but as a visitor under special clearance from the Pentagon. She walked the familiar halls with a strange mixture of nostalgia and tension. Everything looked the same, yet the atmosphere felt different. She wasn't just a rookie nurse anymore. She was someone whose actions had caught the attention of people far beyond the hospital walls. Inside the cardiac observation wing, the atmosphere was unusually calm. Security still maintained a strong presence, but the tension she had felt during her first week had been replaced by quiet anticipation. Lena was led to a private room where the hospital administrators, a few senior nurses, and military medical officers were waiting. There was a quiet urgency in the air, a sense that something important was about to unfold. Dr. Morgan greeted her first. "Thank you for coming back, Lena. We appreciate your cooperation. Today, we want to review the general's case in detail and clarify the role your actions played." Lena nodded, feeling her heart pound. She had no idea what the outcome would be, but she knew she needed to be honest and precise. The military medical officers began by reviewing the general's vital records from the day of admission. The screens displayed a series of graphs, heart rates, and blood pressure readings. Lena recognized the monitor patterns immediately, the ones she had observed when the irregularities first appeared. Dr. Morgan gestured toward the timeline. At 9:42, the general's heart rhythm displayed minor irregularities that automated monitoring systems failed to flag. Your manual pulse check at that moment was recorded, and it alerted the attending physicians to investigate further. Lena listened intently. She had never realized just how close the general had been to a critical event. A chill ran down her spine as she imagined what could have happened if she hadn't acted. One of the military officers spoke next. "We cross-checked the sensor readings, ECG tracings, and the attending nurse logs. Your documentation was precise and timely. Without it, the initial signs might have gone unnoticed until much later." Lena felt a mix of relief and disbelief. She had feared punishment for touching the patient, but now she understood that her actions had truly mattered. The hospital administrators exchanged glances. One of them, the chief nursing officer, spoke cautiously. "We admit that our response to the situation was strictly procedural. It was not intended to undermine the value of the nurse's judgment. However, we must follow security protocols when dealing with high-profile patients." Dr. Morgan nodded. "We understand, but it's important to separate protocol from professional judgment. In this case, the nurse's instinct saved the patient from a potentially life-threatening event." Lena took a deep breath. Hearing this from experienced professionals validated everything she had felt during the incident. She realized that courage often required acting even when rules seemed rigid or consequences frightening. The discussion continued as the team reviewed footage from the monitoring room, security camera clips, and detailed charts. Lena explained each step she had taken, from observing the monitor to deciding to manually check the general's pulse. Her calm, factual recounting impressed everyone in the room. They asked questions not to challenge her, but to understand her thought process fully. As they went through the timeline, the seriousness of the situation became clearer. The general's condition had been subtle, almost imperceptible to automated systems. Lena's intervention had created a crucial window of time for doctors to act. If she had hesitated or followed protocol blindly, the outcome could have been catastrophic. One of the military officers leaned forward. "Lena, your observation allowed us to detect a conduction anomaly in the heart. The attending cardiologist performed a series of tests immediately after your alert, confirming a potentially severe arrhythmia. Early intervention was critical." Lena's chest tightened. The weight of responsibility she had carried during that moment became tangible again. She had acted without certainty, guided only by her instincts and training, and it had made a real difference. Dr. Morgan spoke next. "We are aware that the hospital administration initially terminated your employment. We want to ensure that your role is properly recognized and that the record reflects the importance of your actions." The chief nursing officer looked uncomfortable but nodded. "We will update the documentation accordingly. This incident highlights the need to balance protocol with professional judgment, and your actions are noted." Lena felt a sense of vindication. She had been scared and uncertain, but she had acted, and now that action was being acknowledged. The room fell into a brief silence as everyone reflected on the gravity of the situation. Then Dr. Morgan shifted the focus. "Lena, we also want to discuss your potential future. The Department of Defense has programs specifically designed for nurses who demonstrate exceptional observational skills and the ability to act decisively under pressure. We believe you have the potential to thrive in such programs." Lena's eyes widened. She had never imagined that her first week on the job could lead to an opportunity like this. The thought of training for high-stress environments, learning advanced medical procedures, and being able to make a real difference in critical situations filled her with both excitement and nervousness. "It's a lot to consider," she said quietly. "I want to help and learn, but I also want to make sure I can handle the responsibility." Dr. Morgan smiled reassuringly. "We will provide the necessary guidance and support. This is not just about skill, but also about judgment and instinct. You have already demonstrated both in a critical situation. Lena nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. She realized that the journey ahead would be challenging, but it was also an opportunity to grow in ways she had never expected. The meeting continued with a review of procedural protocols, emergency response techniques, and potential scenarios she might encounter in the future. Lena listened carefully, absorbing every detail. She asked questions when needed and took notes, understanding that every piece of information could be vital. As the discussion concluded, Dr. Morgan stood and extended her hand. "Thank you, Lena. Your cooperation and insight have been invaluable. We will be in touch with further instructions regarding your training and the next steps." Lena shook her hand, feeling a sense of accomplishment and renewed purpose. As she walked out of the conference room, she realized that the events of the past few days had transformed her perspective on nursing responsibility and the impact one person's actions can have. Outside the hospital, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the streets. Lena paused for a moment, taking in the cityscape. The challenges she had faced, the fear, the uncertainty, and the eventual acknowledgement of her efforts had all led her to this point. She felt a quiet determination building inside her. The path ahead would not be easy, but she was ready to embrace it with courage and commitment. As she walked toward the subway station, Lena reflected on the lessons she had learned. Instinct and careful observation could make all the difference. Acting with integrity and attention to detail mattered, even when consequences were uncertain. And sometimes a single decision in a moment of fear could ripple outward, affecting lives in ways one could never fully anticipate. The journey was far from over, but for the first time since her firing, Lena felt confident that she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. She had discovered the power of her instincts, the value of courage, and the potential within herself to make a real difference. And with that realization, she stepped forward into the evening, ready to embrace the next chapter of her life. A few days after the investigation, Lena received another call from the Department of Defense. She had grown used to their formal tone, but this time there was a different energy in the voice on the other end of the line. It was calm yet warm and carried a sense of anticipation. "Lena Carter, this is Dr. Morgan. We have an important update regarding your situation and the recognition of your actions with General Harlow. We would like to invite you for a brief meeting to discuss next steps." Lena felt her chest tighten. The past few days had been overwhelming, and she had spent hours replaying everything in her mind. This call made her feel like she was on the brink of a new chapter. She agreed immediately, eager to know what the discussion would bring. When she arrived at the office, the room was set up more formally than before. A table in the center, chairs around it, and a few officials sitting with calm, expectant expressions. Dr. Morgan greeted her first. "Thank you for coming, Lena," Dr. Morgan said. "Today, we are here to acknowledge your actions and discuss potential opportunities for you." Lena nodded, her hands resting in her lap. She tried to remain calm, though her mind raced with curiosity. Dr. Morgan continued. "Your quick thinking and careful observation during General Harlow's hospitalization provided critical information that allowed the medical team to act promptly. The general himself has expressed his gratitude and requested that the nurse who made the initial observation be officially recognized." Lena's eyes widened. She had never expected to receive acknowledgement from someone of such high rank. She had acted out of instinct and concern, never imagining that it would be noticed in such a way. One of the officials spoke next, a man with a steady, measured voice. "We understand the hospital's administrative actions were protocol-driven. But from a medical standpoint, your decision to check the general's pulse was both courageous and necessary. We want to ensure that your contribution is recorded and that you are recognized appropriately." Lena felt a sense of relief and pride she could hardly describe. The fear, uncertainty, and shame from being fired now seemed like a distant memory. She had acted correctly, and it had mattered. Dr. Morgan then shifted to another topic. "We would like to offer you an opportunity to join a specialized training program designed for nurses who demonstrate exceptional observational skills and the ability to act decisively under pressure. This program trains individuals to respond to high-stress situations, including medical emergencies in complex and critical environments." Lena's heart raced. She had never imagined such a path for herself. It sounded both challenging and exciting, a chance to make a real difference in critical situations. She realized that this was a rare opportunity, and she felt both nervous and eager. I would be honored, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. I want to learn and be able to help in any way I can. The officials nodded in approval. Dr. Morgan continued, the program will provide you with advanced training in medical response, patient assessment, and emergency procedures. You will be supported every step of the way, and your actions will continue to be evaluated for professional growth. Lena felt a surge of determination. She realized that her instincts, attention to detail, and courage had opened a door she had never expected. She felt ready to step through it, to embrace the challenge, and to grow into the nurse she had always hoped to become. The discussion then moved to logistics. Lena was provided with the necessary documents, instructions, and schedules for the training program. She listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions when necessary. Each detail mattered, and she understood that preparation would be critical for success. As the meeting concluded, Dr. Morgan extended her hand. Lena, thank you for your courage, your diligence, and your commitment to patient care. You have proven that even in moments of uncertainty, careful observation and decisive action can save lives. We look forward to supporting you in this next chapter. Lena shook her hand, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and purpose. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and the consequences of her actions, and now she was being recognized and given the opportunity to grow. It was a moment she would never forget. Walking out of the office, Lena felt a renewed sense of confidence. The streets of the city looked different to her now, alive with possibility. She realized that the challenges she had faced were part of a larger journey, one that would test her skills, judgment, and resilience. She felt ready to embrace it all. Over the following weeks, Lena began her training. The program was intense, challenging, and demanding, but it was also incredibly rewarding. She learned advanced techniques in patient assessment, emergency response, and rapid decision-making. Each lesson reinforced the importance of careful observation, trust in her instincts, and the courage to act even when outcomes were uncertain. During her training, Lena often reflected on the first moment she had checked General Harlow's pulse. That simple, instinctive action had set everything into motion. It had changed her life, and perhaps saved a life as well. She realized that her journey as a nurse was no longer just about following instructions or performing routine tasks. It was about being alert, thoughtful, and brave in critical moments. As the weeks passed, Lena's confidence grew. She became more comfortable making quick, accurate assessments, trusted her instincts, and applying her training under pressure. She felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. Each day was a step toward becoming the nurse she aspired to be, a nurse who could make a real difference when it mattered most. One afternoon, Lena received a personal letter from General Harlow himself. He thanked her for her attentiveness and courage during his hospitalization, acknowledging that her quick action had contributed to his recovery. The letter was simple but heartfelt, expressing gratitude and respect for her professionalism and care. Reading the letter, Lena felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that the journey had not been easy, and that fear, doubt, and consequences had been part of the process. But her commitment to doing the right thing, guided by training and instinct, had led to recognition, opportunity, and a meaningful impact on someone's life. As Lena continued her training and looked forward to her future assignments, she carried with her the lessons of her first week. Trust your instincts, act with care and courage, and never underestimate the power of small, decisive actions. She understood that the path ahead would be challenging, but she was ready to face it, knowing that she had already proven her ability to rise to critical moments. The experiences of the past weeks had transformed her. She was no longer just a rookie nurse. She was a nurse who had acted decisively in a critical situation, whose judgment had been recognized at the highest levels, and whose future held the promise of meaningful work where her skills and instincts could truly make a difference. Walking through the city one evening after another day of training, Lena felt a quiet strength within her. The challenges she had faced, the mistakes she feared she had made, and the courage she had shown all led to this moment. She knew that the journey ahead would continue to test her, but she also knew that she had the resilience, judgment, and heart to meet whatever came her way. And with that knowledge, she stepped forward, ready for whatever the next chapter of her life would bring.